All right, so things seem to be going pretty well in the classroom. Your students are on task, they're paying attention, you're getting good eye contact. But then you go home on a Thursday night or a Saturday afternoon and you open your bag and start grading papers, and they're just not very good. Why is that? My name's Peter. I'm an 18th year high school teacher, and I have 10 reasons that your students' papers are not very good this year. Reason number one, your students don't know what good papers look like. It might be that you've spent time going over the material, you've given them instructions, you've even broken down the instructions, you've even given them time in class. But a lot of your students, they've never seen a paper, and your descriptions of it haven't gone far enough to let them know what it looks like. The truth of the matter is that there's really nothing like a model for teaching students how to write papers. Even a graphic organizer is not as good. You might have some students in class who are successful without you showing a model, but typically a lot of those students are your higher achievers. A lot of them have college educated parents, and in a lot of the situations, a lot of them are getting help from the parents at home. So it's not really you teaching them how to write the papers, but their parents. And that doesn't do your middle achieving and lower achieving students very much good at all. Reason number two that your students' papers aren't very good this year, you may have shown them a model of what a paper looks like, but you haven't taken the time to break down that model and show them what the separate pieces are. To them, it just looks like one continuous string of text moving from top to bottom. They don't understand the distinctions between introduction and thesis and topic sentences, the transitions into arguments, the evidence for the arguments, the way the evidence is explained or commented on. You need to take the time to not only show the students papers, but give them copies, give them highlighters, at the very least, have them get out pens or pencils and do some underlining and circling work so they understand the distinct and separate parts of the paper. Reason three, having shown the students model papers and having broken down those model papers, you may not have given your students enough time to work on those papers in class. You may have given them enough time out of class to your thinking, but students today are busier and more distracted than they've been in the past. And more often, they have less parental guidance at home telling them to get on task and do work. And so, if you've assigned a paper and not given any time in class, a lot of your students just don't have the organizational a lot of your students just don't have the organizational power or the willpower to get that done. I typically assign a paper and give a span of time that's between 1 and 2 weeks so that my students have at least one weekend in between my assigning and the paper being due. And often, if it's a bigger paper, I give them 2 weekends or even 3 weekends. Giving students time outside of class isn't enough either. Again, they have those activities, they have other classes of homework. Some of them may have to work, some of them may have to babysit their siblings. And again, a lot of them just don't have the organization or the willpower to get on task, and they don't have the parents at home to make them do these things. I like to give my students at least a class period or a class period and a half or two class periods where I can be in the room with them and answer their questions as they go. Reason number four splits off from reason number three, and that is having given students time in class, you've given them unstructured time instead of structured time. Unstructured time means that you're giving them the gift of time to do with as they please, which means some of them are going to do their math homework and some of them are going to cram for their social studies test, and a lot of them are just going to chat or scroll on their phones or just stare off into space. Structured time means that you give them time and they have to meet certain requirements within that time. They have to finish that introduction paragraph, or maybe before that, they have to finish their brainstorming activity. Or maybe before doing any of the brainstorming or writing of the introduction paragraph, maybe they need to use that time to find two or three or four or five pieces of evidence in a text they're working with. Structured time means that students know they have to use the time to be productive. The other advantage to giving students time in class is that when they run into roadblocks, as they inevitably will, uh, you are there to answer their questions. And it also gives you a chance to go around and just look over their shoulders and make sure they're getting things done. Giving students grades for using the time in class can be good to help build that volition, build that momentum. They can start to build small victories so that the bigger victories are easier to achieve, so that the bigger obstacles are easier to get over. Reason number five that your students' papers aren't very good this year might be that your expectations are too high. And I don't want to say that high expectations are a bad thing. And I don't want to say that you should not think that your students should write good papers. I want to say that if you tell your students that their papers should be perfect, a lot of students are going to break down and not start to begin with because they will recognize that perfection is out of their grasp. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of telling students that I want a very good rough draft. I've gotten a lot of mileage out of telling students that I will gladly overlook two or three or four or five mistakes and still give a very high or perfect grade. Um, we're working with a generation of students who are more anxious, more inclined to depression. They have those little phones in their pockets. They see perfection a lot more often, and they are terrified that they will not measure up. If you tell them they don't have to measure up, that they just have to achieve, that they just have to complete, it will be a tremendous relief for them and they will produce for you. The second way that your expectations can be too high is if you tell your students that you want a completely original product. The fact of the matter is today that our finest screenwriters, novelists, poets, the finest artists, all of our finest creatives, none of them are producing things that are completely original whole cloth. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything is a recreation, everything is an amalgamation. And if you tell your students that they have to do something that even professional artists and creatives can't do, they will shut down because they know they don't have a chance. In high school English classes, making something new means that we create a new arrangement of existing things. We blend arguments together to build new arguments. We blend research together to compile new findings to present. And telling students that they have to make something absolutely new, unprecedented, uncliched, original, it just doesn't work in the modern world. Reason number six, it may be that you have not stair-stepped your students up to the difficulty of this assignment. That is, it might be 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks into the school year and you haven't assigned any work yet, and then suddenly you spring a 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 page paper on your students and they are just shutting down because it's not even that they're just shutting down, it's that they've never even gotten started. They need to get going slowly at the beginning of the year. I highly recommend you give small token assignments on the first day of class, and if not on the first day of class, then in the first week or 2 weeks of class, and then have those assignments build so they can slowly build the habit of working in class and working out of class. Um, Going from 0 to a 6 or 8 page paper can be really difficult for students, especially if they're not really clear on what your expectations are. They will shut down. Reason number seven builds off of reason number six, and this is that it might not be that you haven't stair stepped properly, but your department might be out of line. This is especially true for 11th and 12th grade teachers, but sometimes even 10th grade teachers or ninth grade teachers who aren't aligned with the middle school teachers coming before them. And that could be that you're just expecting a level of work that the previous classes have not prepared them for, and you need to be in better communication with the teachers in your department so you know what the kids are capable of when they get to your class. Reason number eight might actually be my favorite, and that is that you haven't helped the students with the most difficult part of the paper, and that's the thesis. Writing a strong paper, whether it's 2 or 3 paragraphs, 2 or 3 pages, 20 or 30 pages, all starts with this little kernel, this little seed of the thesis. And if students can't write a good thesis, they really just can't write a good paper. The truth of the matter is that as an advanced placement 12th grade teacher, I often give my students thesis statements or thesis templates where they will fill in blanks within the thesis at the beginning of the year and even the middle of the year so that they learn what the proper thesis statements look like. And then working with a good thesis or thesis template that I have given them, they have the ability to spring off of that and write papers that are good. And it gives them the confidence and the know-how and the tools that they need in order to write their own thesis statements in the future. Reason number nine is my other favorite. Sorry, I've saved all my favorites for the end. And this one is that the students don't even know why they're writing these papers to begin with. It seems like busy work to them. It seems arbitrary. They're saying, why are we even doing this? Can't we just have artificial intelligence do all of this for us? And I like to tell my students early in the process that we write papers because writing papers helps us practice logical thinking. I like to say that in a court case, you will have a claim such as so and so committed murder, and then you will have arguments to support that claim, and then you will have evidence to support those arguments, and then you'll have explanations that will explain how that evidence supports those arguments and how those arguments support those claims. I like to help my students understand that if they can't write clearly, it might be an indication that they aren't thinking clearly. And everyone thinks their ideas are brilliant until they try and articulate their ideas. And if they can't articulate their ideas might not actually be quite as brilliant as they thought. And maybe if they practice writing those things, they can get smarter and achieve that kind of brilliance that they and you know they are capable of. The last reason that your students' papers are not very good this year is that you haven't given them any self-editing or peer evaluation time. Uh, I know a lot of teachers build this in on the class period before the due date. I know a lot of teachers forego it completely. I know it can be dangerous because a lot of times students give other students bad feedback, and learning how to discern bad feedback from good feedback is a difficult skill. Uh, I still think that you should give your students a peer evaluation day so they can practice evaluating others, so they can practice evaluating their own work. I will even go so far as to use a due date, have my students turn in the paper on time, give them points for turning in the paper on time, a token 10 points, say, and then come back the next class with that stack of papers they've handed me and hand them back and give them an evaluation tool so they can self-evaluate, and then give them a chance if they want to revise and turn in that paper again. And if they do that, it frequently gives me a better product and it makes my Thursday evening or Saturday afternoon of grading go a lot better. Teachers, that's the 10 pieces of advice I have for you for helping your students write stronger papers this year. I hope they help you. If you have ideas and you want to put them in the comments below, I think it could be helpful for other teachers, other new teachers. If you have disagreements, I would love to hear them. I think that disagreement is a great way for everyone to learn. I'd love constructive, productive disagreement. If you want to hit those buttons and do those things that will help other people see this video, I would appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Happy teaching.